Yes team, welcome to my YouTube channel. So today's video is about training to failure or training further away from failure. What is better for muscle growth? Do you have to train to absolute failure in order to build muscle? I'll be discussing this in today's video, giving you some practical tips that you can apply to your own training. If you are new to my channel, my name is Dan and I simplify losing fat and building muscle, giving you the tips that you need to get better results in the gym without having to spend hours and hours reading all of the research yourself. If you like this sort of content, please do drop the video a like, it really helps out the channel, and we're going to get into today's tips. The background to this is there are many schools of thought around training, how close you should train to failure, and what you need to do in order to build muscle. And there's two main camps with this. So there's the low volume camp and the high volume camp. Volume in this context means the number of sets that we're performing. And the lower volume sort of school of approach, which I don't know if it was originally created by Dorian Yates, but he's quite famous in this context. So you have bodybuilders that have built incredible physiques with a very low number of sets, low volume approaches where you just take every set to absolute failure. How hard can you go on each set? And you have the more calculated approach, which you could argue someone like Jeff Nippard is very good at this in terms of calculating percentage of 1 rep max, staying within say 2 to 3 reps away from failure, and just being a bit more calculated with this. In this situation, you are part of the higher volume approach, maybe performing 3, 4 or more sets per exercise. Now, the reason for this is essentially a sliding scale. So to simplify all of this for you, the closer that you train to failure, the closer you take each set to failure, the less sets, the amount of work you're going to be doing is less. So if you're training close to failure, then the set is going to be super challenging and you're going to accumulate a lot of effective or stimulating reps for muscle growth. Now, if you're staying further away from failure, then you're going to accumulate less effective reps or stimulating reps for muscle growth. Now, we know that the last few reps within a set are the ones that are going to actually create the muscle growth, right? So when you pick a weight, let's say you do 10 reps and you had maybe 2 left in the tank, the first 4 or 5 are going to be pretty easy, and it's only when you get towards the last few reps of that set where things actually get challenging, and these are the ones that actually count. These are the challenging reps that are going to promote growth. Now, the sliding scale of this is absolute failure, reps in reserve, meaning how many reps you had left in the tank is 0, and the higher volume school of thought will be reps in reserve around 3, so not leaving more than 3 reps left in the tank. If you go for this approach where you're backing away further away from failure, you're going to need more sets. So you're going to go for 3 or 4 working sets in this scenario, and you probably can get away with 1 heavy working set to failure on this approach. And this sliding scale is important because if you do too many sets on this side of the equation, if you are taking every set to failure and you do more than say 1 heavy working set on tons of exercises, you are battering your recovery and there is more muscle damage associated with training to failure. So if you take every single set to failure, you cannot recover from it if you are doing too many sets. So this is why you have to be very cautious on how many working sets you are doing if you are training to failure, because more muscle damage potentially means more DOMs, so more aches, poor recovery, and then limiting how much muscle growth you are actually going to be able to get in future sessions training that muscle group. Now, on the other side of the equation, if you are taking sets to 3 away from failure, so reps in reserve of 3, then you are going to need more working sets. Now, this does come with less muscle damage, less impact on recovery, but I think the biggest issue with this approach is for a lot of people, this leads them to not actually pushing themselves enough in the gym, right? So when you are relatively new to training, it's quite hard to establish an accurate reps in reserve scale and figure out how many you had left in the tank. And it's interesting because studies looking at this found that people do definitely have more reps than they think that they have. So your mind is going to give up before your muscles will, essentially. So you might think that you've got only 2 reps left in the tank at the end of a set, but in actual fact you might have had 4 or 5, because if you just push through that mental barrier when stuff gets tough, you imagine you're doing a leg extension, that really burns towards the end, right? So I've seen this with clients myself. You get towards the end of a set of leg extensions, your quads start firing and burning a little bit. You probably had 5 reps left, 6 reps left, but because there's a little pain threshold there, your brain's essentially saying no, stop, fight or flight, and people back off away from failure and essentially doing themselves a disservice. So it's super important that if you are going to leave more than, say, 1 or 2 reps in the tank and you're going to go to like 3 reps in reserve, you need to get enough sets in to ensure that the number of stimulating reps and that are going to impact muscle growth are sufficient. So you probably need more like 4 working sets if you per muscle group or per exercise, if you are around 3 reps away from failure. Here is a very key point though. Both approaches are going to work. So you'll see people that go more on the higher volume approach, a bit further away from failure, doing 3 or 4 sets. And you have people that are doing very low volume approaches for training at absolute failure. Both of them can get incredible results, and one is not necessarily better than the other. So my main advice to you is play about with this, see what you prefer. Everyone's recovery capabilities are going to be a bit different, and it's just absolutely pointless people squabbling over this. You'll see people online arguing, training to failure versus reps in reserve and staying further away from failure, what's best? And it really does not matter. It's just pick a training approach that you enjoy, that you can recover from, and as long as the weights are going up over time, as long as you are applying progressive overload and you are seeing results, that is the main thing. Enjoying your training has to be the priority, because muscle building takes a long time, so you better enjoy the process and you better enjoy your training sessions. And if you much prefer doing more sets, then do that. If you much prefer just training as hard as you can on each set and a lower volume approach, do that. And some people are going to be in the middle, so I would encourage you to try different approaches and see what you respond better to. But no approach is necessarily going to be better or most optimal. It's going to come down to different people's opinions, preferences, and recovery capabilities. So don't get lost in all of this and overthink anything. Just pick an approach, give it a go, and then correct as you go. So in summary, with training to failure, I would err on the side of somewhere in the middle between 3 reps in reserve and 0. So the sweet spot to mitigate not tons of muscle damage that you'll get going to failure, and also to ensure that the weights are challenging enough to promote muscle growth, I would say stay in that sweet spot of, say, 1 to 2 reps in reserve on each set, and try for 2 or 3 heavy working sets in your training, and focus on progressive overload, increasing the weight over time first before you add any more sets. If you go ahead and try and jump up from 3 to 4 to 5 working sets, you're going to impact your recovery, and it may stall the weights that you are lifting rather than increasing the weight over time, which is what we need to build muscle. So don't lose sight of the importance of increasing the weight over time in order to see the changes in the mirror. This should be the priority first. Try training 1 or 2 reps away from failure on each set. Once you know that you can recover and the weights are going up over time, whether that be 2 working sets, 3 working sets per exercise, then you may be able to potentially go a bit higher volume in the future. That being said, I don't think there is a massive benefit for people doing more than, say, 3 working sets per exercise, because it usually limits people's ability to train hard enough to build muscle, and I think most people just leave too many reps in the tank in general. So start on the side of 2 or 3 working sets per exercise. Then when once you can recover and increase the weights over time, then maybe go to 4 if you want. But that is how to apply it to your own training. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what more you'd like to see. Reminder, in terms of yourself getting some nice freebies, there is a free training program available to you in my Instagram bio, a fat loss guide as well if you want to get in shape. And if you want any further support with this, I have places available for my online coaching. So if you are interested in this, visit my website, which is in the video description, and get in touch today. I would love to help you achieve some amazing results. Thank you very much if you made it this far. I will see you on the next video. Have a great rest of your day. See you later.